Okay, chapter 1, driver's education. Your driver's ed success is around the next turn. And there's a little cartoon there, right? The driver education car and the instructor. Was a little bit concerned because, the student has made the first initial step getting in the driver's ed car, but they're sitting in the back seat, right? And they should be sitting in the front seat. So it's normal to be a little nervous before driver's ed. And we're on your side. We're trying to teach you the right thing to do. So relax and, just try to listen to the instructions of your driving teachers. And we're trying to develop some good established habits. So it's normal to be nervous. In everyday life, there are many types of conflicts and risks, but the main risk in driving is the possibility of having a conflict that results in a collision. And the key to becoming a safe and responsible driver is to learn about the risks of driving and how to manage them. When you drive a car, you become part of the massive system called the highway transportation system. And it's composed of three parts: people, vehicles, and roadways. And the goal is to get everybody safely on, the road, going their directions. That's the most important part. So people are also known as roadway users, and you have different characteristics, right? Different people with different mental, physical, and emotional conditions. So you're required to drive 6 hours in driver's ed, but I would suggest more. You're supposed to drive with your parents for 20 hours of experience. Because you practice anything for 6 hours, you're not going to be very good at it. About shooting baskets, playing the piano, you need more practice. There's 240 million registered passenger vehicles in the U.S. You're going to encounter different types of vehicles, everything from this little kid on the bike to semi-tractors. So you got to have lots of experience around them. And you want to be a safe driver. Share the road with all the different users. Vehicles come in all forms of shapes and sizes. And then you have different roadways, from the interstate to the gravel road or the dirt road. National Highway Safety Act sets the traffic safety guidelines with the help of local, state, and federal agencies. One thing that's misunderstood a little bit is the police don't decide who is guilty or innocent. They just enforce the laws that are written by the legislature, in our case, the Iowa legislature. So the Iowa legislature passes a law, it's their job to execute the law. And so they don't really determine innocent or guilt. When they write you a ticket, you can go to court and you can plead not guilty if you think that it was unjust. So the driving task, you have to be socially mature, you have to be physically able to do it, and then mentally able to do it as well. So you need visual skills, anticipate how your car will respond, judging speed, time, and space. And then monitoring the road for unpredictable actions of other drivers and pedestrians, making sure that everyone's safe. IPDE is an acronym. An acronym is kind of like the first letter of IPD stands for something different. So identify stands for, or I stands for identify important information. P is predict, points of possible conflict. D is decide how to avoid that conflict. Do I brake? Do I steer? Do I accelerate? And then execute. And you can see from the pictures here. Now, technically, I don't think you're like, as you're driving, you're always like physically saying that or out loud, but you're kind of just do it mentally as you're driving. It's a good tool. The other system is called the zone control system, and you have 6 zones. So you should know what's going on all around your vehicle. Front, back, and as I'm driving down the highway, for example, I'm scanning the road for deer, and I'm not listening too much to, I don't have like Lady Gaga cranking on the tunes really loud and distracted. I'm paying attention to all my zones. Once you've mastered the IPD process, you will be able to practice low risk driving. Of course, there's a whole section in your book called defensive driving. So defensive driving is important, and you're basically anticipating that other people are going to make mistakes, and you're compensating for them, right? So driving is a privilege, not a right. Lots of people get their license taken away, and the last thing that we would like for you to have happen is your license taken away. But so you have to follow all the legal, financial, and environmental responsibilities. And your primary responsibility as a driver is to obey all traffic laws. The difference a little bit between a collision and an accident. So a collision occurs when a vehicle conflicts with and hits another object. So a lot of times they might say something like, the courier says, there was an accident at Highway 34 and 63, and the drunk driver ran into another car. Well, that's really not an accident, because it could have been prevented. The guy, didn't have to drink. Maybe he could have made a different decision, called for a ride home, taking a taxi or like an Uber or whatever. But in other words, we throw the word accident around too much, and these things can be prevented. So the main cause of these types of things are driver error, driving too fast, following too closely, operating a defective vehicle, people not wearing their seatbelt, driving after been drinking, cell phone distractions. So the number one cause of death among young people your age, and the highest statistically, is riding in a car. As an experienced driver's ed instructor, I can say that in my lifetime that I've seen kids that have either died in a car crash or been severely injured, and that's the last thing any of us would want to have happen to you. So I'm not trying to scare anybody, but you need to know that the number one cause of death among people your age is motor vehicle collisions. And traffic collisions have a tremendous social and economic impact. Cost our nation billions of dollars. You have certain operating and fixed costs, fuel, oil, tires, and then fixed costs are license, insurance, price of your car, and then try to be good, kind to our environment. Again, same thing. Highway death rates among teens are higher than any other age group because of lack of experience and inability to make decisions. 41% of the young people who were killed in these collisions died in a single car crash. And again, some ways to suggest to protect the environment. So quality driver's ed programs should give you the opportunity to practice some safe and skilled driving techniques and practice before you get out there on your own. And we have Iowa's graduated driver's license system, and it takes you through different steps. I'll talk a little bit about that. So you have the learner's permit stage at age 14. And I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about this. School permits you can get at 14 and a half, and you got to have your instruction permit for at least 6 months. Drive to and from the school directly, any school activity. The hours are 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. Intermediate stage, you've had to have your instruction permit for a full year, and then you drive 5 a.m. to 12:30. And then you can go anywhere, but your parents could restrict you to one passenger. So, for example, I forgot to say this, on your school permit, you could only have one non-family member with you in the vehicle. So intermediate stage, you have to have at 16, you have to have your you have to have a permit for a full year, and then you can get the intermediate license. After you've had your intermediate license, you can graduate to the full privileges after you've had your intermediate for a year. Implied consent means that you agree to an alcohol test on request if you get pulled over. It's just, it's just part of the rules when you sign up for your license. And then they're going to ask you if you want, when you get your license, if you want to be an organ donor, right? And organ donation and tissue donation is a very important concept because of so many people across the country, but also in Iowa that, without tissue and organ donation, they might die. So it's very, basically it's the last thing people can do for other people when they have no other option. And that's a personal decision that you need to decide for yourself.